Hey, what's up guys? Really excited to bring you another video today. Going to talk about installing packages or your nukes you're doing, because boy, this is the time to start doing that, and a lot of you are getting your nucleus or your packages of bees this week. And I've got 5 tips for you on dealing with your new installation. It might be a new beekeeper doing it, or it might be maybe this is your second time around or something. But there's a lot of questions and a lot of things that you need to know about, and I'm narrowing it down to 5. The 5 tips are going to deal with absconding, feeding, how soon do you check on your queen to make sure she's okay and out of her cage. It's also about how soon do you start checking for mites. And the last tip is going to be how soon do you add a second deep box to your brood box area. I'm going to start right off showing you how to install the packaged bees. This is going to be a refresher for those of you that may have done it last year. It may be brand new for those of you that are scared to death, biting your nails and worried about it. We're also going to talk an extra bonus tip. Let's get started right now. Let's jump into the video, show you how to install the package. So I'll just shake the bees down. This doesn't hurt the bees any like this. Put my finger on the pink tab, pull this up, grab the queen, and then we'll look at her and examine her and make sure she's alive. So we'll just set the queen aside, like maybe right there on a frame. Let her sit there for a minute. And now all we're going to do is dump the bees into the box. So you're just shaking the bees in there. Works out pretty nicely. And then once you get the majority of the bees out of the box, then you may want to kind of shake the box again and get all the bees down in one spot. For now, let's put the frames back in. So the queen is in her cage here. I take this nail and I'm going to run it through without, hitting the queen, and I'm going to just allow this nail to be what holds the queen cage between 2 frames. So I want to put her between these 2 frames here. First, we have to make sure that we take the pink cap off. Now that's a lot of sugar, because I'm going to remove some of that sugar candy, the queen candy, because the bees have been in there a long time. Several days now in that package. They're getting more and more used to the queen. So what I want to do now is help them get her out of this cage pretty quickly. I don't want to directly release her. Now it might work, but you know what? That seems like it's a little risky to me. So I'm not going to do a direct release. But I'm going to really loosen up this candy. Not much in there. Okay. So be sure and do that. Be sure and clear the cap off of it before you insert the queen. The bees are spraying some Nasinoff gland pheromones to kind of orientate the rest of the bees where the hive is. Now let's just clean up our little mess we made, and it's ready for a top cover and good to go. All right, tip number 1 is about absconding. I've spoken to this before, made a video about it. Many of you really enjoyed it, but I want to just summarize it once again. When you install a new package of bees, remember those bees aren't really associated with your hive yet. They were living in a package. They didn't have a queen walking around. She was in her separate cage, and now you're blending them all together, and you're trying to introduce a new queen, and likely you have new foundation that has no comb on it. Bees have a lot of work cut out for them. To you, this new hive seems perfect for a colony. All the new frame, all the new fresh smelling wood. It's beautifully painted. Oh, it would be perfect place for bees. Not really. Bees would rather probably be in an old tree with a big hole in it. So, to them, this is kind of a desert. It's a little bit foreign. So they are not totally in love with your box, and they can leave if they want to and go find that tree. So bees sometimes do abscond when you first install them from a package. And that's so devastating because number 1, you spend a lot of money. Number 2, you can't get them back. They're just gone. And number 3, a lot of bee producers are out of bees, so you can't even get a replacement package. So you need to take necessary steps
so that your bees don't abscond. What I recommend you doing is if you're installing more than one package, you need to put some distance between your two hives and make them face different directions. If you're doing one hive only, make sure you put something on the front of the hive like a big circle or a big black plastic triangle, something to show those new bees when they take their orientation flight that that is their home. Do something like that. Here's some other tips. If you want to, put a queen excluder between the bottom board and the deep hive body for about 7 days. The queen can't leave, and so the colony can't abscond. Another tip is spray down your new foundation with some sugar water 1-to-1. That will help the bees start eating something. And another tip is to feed them from the top. Here in Illinois and most of the Midwest and North, we still get a lot of cold weather right now. And so when the bees are in there, they're going to start clustering, or we're going to have some rainy weather like we've been having here in Illinois, cold and rainy. And so that new colony that's in there, they need fed because there's no way they can go out and gather nectar from flowers. Plus, there's no place to put it because basically all the frames are new foundation. And so you need to feed them, and I prefer to feed those bees from the top. We'll talk about feeding in just a moment, but feeding the bees can help them not abscond. Also, that new colony that's in there shaken from your package, they need a little bit of darkness. So if you got a screen bottom board, slide something in there so they don't see daylight through the screen just for the first week. We're trying to get them not to abscond and leave you forever. By the way, absconding means all the bees leave. That's not swarm. That's when half the bees leave. This is absconding when they just don't want to stay there and they all leave. And it really does happen often when you're installing a new package. Now, we talked a little bit about feeding. This is tip number 2. Feeding can oftentimes help the bees not abscond because they're busy eating some food. And when they consume the sugar water, they're able to make some wax with their wax glands and build out some cool frames of comb. And that gives the queen ability to lay more. And so by feeding them from the top, bingo, that's the way to do it. You feed them from the top because it's colder in the spring at night sometimes, and they may still cluster a little bit. If you feed them from an entrance feeder, they are very highly unlikely to leave the cluster, go down to the bottom, and outside the hive almost to actually eat from that entrance feeder. If that's all you have, you'll get by with it fine. But if you have a preference, if you're still in the negotiating your equipment stage, try to get a top feeder on that hive to feed that new package. Now, feeding can be 1-to-1 sugar water. That's probably primary source of food in that new package. We like to encourage you to add additives such as Honey Bee Healthy, Amino Bee Booster, and our protein powder that really does help the bees a lot. We have that available on our website. These feeding additives can really give your bees a gigantic boost when you're feeding them from the top like that. Now, how long should you feed your bees? You know what? You want to feed them long enough to get them a good start. Some people say as long as they're drawing out wax on that new foundation, keep feeding them. But there's a point you'll know that you've fed them enough. Maybe they're not eating much anymore. I hear a lot of people tell me, David, I've been feeding my bees and all at once they just stopped sort of eating from my jars anymore. Well, that's because they're flying. They're going to what they want to go to are those beautiful flowers. So when they kind of calm down, not eating so much out of your jars, then that's a pretty good indication you can stop feeding them. But on my rule of thumb, when I have a heavy nectar flow, I'm not going to feed my bees anymore because I know that they're bringing in nectar and I really don't depend on that added sugar water as a resource. Now, a big question that many of you ask is, when do I check and make sure my queen is out of her separate cage and laying? Well, you know what? You don't want to go in too early. If you install your package on, say, a Monday, and then you go back on a Tuesday to see if your queen is out laying, that's way too early. She could be. They're going to eat through some candy to get her out of that cage. But at the same time, you might disturb them, and that might make them think they don't like their new environment, and they may abscond. I would hold off at least 3 to 5 days before I go back out there and check on that queen. Give her time to really be worked out of that cage by her other workers eating that candy, and that way you can have a little bit more time to see if she's out laying eggs. Now, if you go out there and check and she's not out of her cage yet, and let's say it's day 5, 6, or 7, you can go ahead and help her out by removing that candy a little bit or taking a chunk of it out or just shaking her out. I don't recommend you shake her out of her cage. She can be a little flighty. She might even fly away. So let her just walk out of that cage, but you could remove some candy to speed things up. Tip number 4 on that new package. A lot of you asked me, how soon do I start checking for mites on that new package? Hey, you can check right away if you want to, just out of curiosity. What's the number? But I would wait a little bit. There's no reason to rush it, actually. They're not going to have a generation of bees emerge out of their cells until about 21 plus days. So you've got plenty of time to wait on that. Now, they're going to have more mites as each generation, which is the queen's laying about 1,000 eggs a day. So there's a point where every day there's about 1,000 bees emerging. And those 1,000 bees, when they emerge, they can also emerge with the mites that have been reproducing in those cells. So as soon as a bee emerges, mites emerge. So the more generations you have, the more mites you're going to have. Usually I tend to wait about a month after I install my package, and that's when I'll do my first mite inspection. Now, before we get into tip number 5, let me encourage you to please subscribe. We reached 82,000 subscribers today. I can't do this without you guys, and boy, you're pulling your weight. Thank you so much. I'm proud of you guys. Gosh. I still have a lot more people viewing my channel than I do subscribing, so I would appreciate if you'd go the extra mile for me and please subscribe. Tip number 5 is really about when to add that second box. That's really a mystery to some people. When I see that the bees have drawn comb out on 5 of their frames in that first deep box, it's time for me to add the second box. Now, for some of you that are installing your nooks, they come with 5 frames drawn out. In that case, you're going to have to think through it and say, do I get my new nucleus and install them into my deep and immediately add another deep, or do I wait? Always wait. Wait at least a week after you get your new 5-frame nuke. Wait about a week before you feel like you need to add that second box. We're doing that to help this new colony get familiar with your surroundings and their new home before we add another deep to it. So 5-frame nuke, wait about a week, add a second box. But on your packages, the way you're going to do it is just take a look at how many frames are drawing out with their wax, how many bees are on those frames. And once they get about 5 of those drawn out, both sides, all the way down, that's when it's time to add your second deep. Now, I'm going to give you a bonus tip at the end of this video on this new box you're going to add and how it's going to make it go much faster. So stay tuned. Okay, I want to give out some shout outs to some subscribers and comments that you left. You guys are asking a lot of questions. Let me remind you that I am unable to answer every single question that you leave. I select a few for each video, so subscribe and I may answer your question in a future video. This one says, "Hi David, I see swarms of bees around the house every year looking for a new home. This has sparked my interest and brought me to your videos. I have set out 2 hives and tomorrow I receive my first ever package of bees. I plan to capture a swarm for the second hive. Love your talks, and although I should have already done so, I plan on taking one of your courses on beekeeping. Thank you for sharing with all of us." Well, thank you. That's good to hear that your bees are coming. And this video is going to help you, I know. And this is going to be a good insight for you to know how to deal with that new package. I do hope you take a class. Classes are so important. If you start beekeeping and you don't have the fundamentals down, it's going to be really guesswork for you. And it's not as easy to keep bees. There's a lot to it, actually. And so taking a class will help you have more confidence and make fewer mistakes. David, I have a question for you, not related to the videos, but I've been told that the queen sets the temperament of the hive. So why is it that when a hive is queenless, beekeepers say they're more aggressive? To try and explain this a different way, I've been told that if the hive is aggressive, to replace the queen, and the colony temperament should change. Your thoughts, sir? Yeah, thanks, Max. Good to hear from you again. Hey, that's a good question. The temperament of the hive is determined by the progeny, the offspring of the queen. And so all the workers are the ones that we really read about, wow, this hive is aggressive or calm. So to answer the first part of your question, Max, yeah, when a hive is queenless, they do seem to be a little more, I wouldn't say aggressive, but they're a little more noisier. And the reason that is because that colony doesn't have as much brood to take care of. Without a queen, they're not going about their typical routine of taking care of all that brood and raising, the next generation. They've been cut from that detail. So there's less activity in the brood area, so the bees have more time on their hands. They're just going to be a little more restless. I wouldn't say really aggressive maybe, but just a little bit more noisier. They seem to not have a full work order ahead of them. And so they're just kind of scraping through doing things as they would not normally do, which might mean they would see you more easily and react to you. Whereas if they were raising brood and moving food around to larvae and such, they're busy. They may not take time to care about you looking at a hive. Now, the reason that we replace a queen when the colony does seem to be aggressive is because all of her daughters are from her. And so that means that likely if we can replace the queen with a new queen, all the new daughters that emerge from the new queen are going to have a different disposition or temperament. So we're changing genetics is what we're doing. And after about 30 to 40 days, the old queen's daughters die off and they're being replaced by the daughters of the new queen that you got, hopefully of better temperament. That explained a little bit better for you, Max? Kathy asked a good question, and I felt like I needed to answer this for quite a while, so I really want to address this one. She says, thanks, David. This was a very informative video as always. A question on your classes online. Are these classes given at a certain time and day of the week only, or are they online and can be taken at the student's time frame? Just thought I would ask, not that I remember hearing you talk about this. Keep your videos coming when possible. Thanks. Hey, thanks, Kathy. Good question about my online beekeeping courses. I get this asked a lot. Here's the deal. When you order an online course, you'll get a link that will take you to the videos of me teaching you these classes. Those links are yours forever. And when you go to those links and start watching my videos, you can hit pause and come back to it later. And so you can hit cancel and you can bring the video back up a month from now, a year from now. Many people have continued to review them a year later. And so, no, they're not a particular day of the week. No, there's no time limit to them. No, you don't have to be anywhere. This is not a Zoom meeting. It's basically what you're looking at right now with some more features, but it's me teaching you, and you can play those lessons, those videos anytime you want to for as long as you want to. Is that clear enough? We got time for one more question, and then I've got another tip I'm going to give you about installing packages and nucleuses that will help you a bunch. Mike says, once a super is getting mostly full of honey, like 5+ frames cap, do you recommending adding additional super on top or under the first super? So this is all about, do you add a super, you got one super here that's on top of maybe 2 deeps and it's getting almost full. Do you just throw another super there, or do you lift this one up and slide another super under there? You know what? We could flip a coin and it's going to be 50-50. I think if I talk to beekeepers, half of them do it one way, half the other way. The reason I do it my way is that all I can tell you is that I don't prefer to use queen excluders because they tend to be honey excluders, keeping my bees from freely passing up there. I do use them at times when I have to. But if I can get away with not using the queen excluder, I do. And one of the ways is that I let that first honey super get completely capped over with honey, and then I top super. I add more to the top. Because when the queen's laying egg down in the brood and she starts to want to go up, and she hits that honey barrier, she doesn't go any higher than that honey barrier. And so that's the way bees operate in the wild in a tree. You see the brood nest down below, stored honey up above. So I just kind of mimic what bees are doing in nature. I just top super. Now, a lot of people say you can get more honey faster because the bees were kind of traveling up to that super that you put on top that used to be lower, and you put a new one in between it. Hey, that might work great. Try it. Try the 2 methods if you can. See which one you like better. I just do it because I don't want to use the queen excluder, and I want to use that first super as a honey barrier. And oftentimes I leave that one on for winter anyway. So I have one super that is kind of part of their whole operation. 2 deeps and 1 honey super is theirs, right? And then I add my supers on top of that. I hope that answers your question. That's a good question. Now, guys, this next tip is really going to be a good one for you. It's all about adding that second box the best way to do it. Now, some of you follow my work here on YouTube and you know this already. A lot of you are brand new. I can tell by the comments that some of you just find my channel like yesterday and you haven't looked at the history of all the things I've been teaching here on YouTube on beekeeping. So let me just bring you up to speed on what I like to do when I add my second box. I will take a frame out of the lower box, preferably a frame of bees with open brood, open larvae. The larvae is showing, the eggs are showing. It doesn't matter if I take the queen up there or not, but I will take one frame out of the bottom box, add it to the new top box right in the middle. And in the space where I removed the frame in the lower box, I put an empty frame or a drawn comb frame, whatever you have. I put it to make up that space down there. Always keep 10 frames or whatever your configuration is. Always keep the maximum number of frames in each box. Now what that does is it baits those bees to go up and start taking care of the open brood. And while they're up there working that center frame in that new box on top, then they're going to be right next to maybe an undrawn foundation and they're going to get to work on it instantly. If I didn't do that, the bees aren't going to be so quick to move up into that second box. This is just a way and a tip for you that really works well for me, that I'm really excited about, that I've used for years. Now, believe it or not, I have 5 more tips for you, but they're in a new video that I just made, and it's all about April tips. Things you should be doing in April as a beekeeper. Check out these 5 tips. Make sure you're doing them all. I'll see you next time.